Hi, I'm Amanda Jane, and welcome to the Communicate with Confidence podcast. My aim is to take the fear out of communicating and make it easy and fun. On this podcast, I'm going to be talking about everything to do with good communication, how we can connect with our audience, get better at speaking and giving presentations, increase visibility, and ultimately get more sales. I'll also be talking to some incredible people about their business, and I'll be getting their insights on how they view communication and how comfortable they are showing up in person and on social media. So let's get started. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Communicate with Confidence podcast. And today I have with me Bryony Jackson from Bryony Makes Marketing Easy. Hello Bryony.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for joining me. I'm really looking forward to this. So before we get started and find out a little bit more about you, have you had a chance to look at your favorite motivational song?
I have, and I've actually picked two because the first one people might not recognize. So there's a band called Street Sweeper Social Club, which was actually started by one of the guys from Rage Against the Machine. So it's that kind of music. But they have got a song called Fight, Smash, Win. And it's such a motivational song. I used to use it. I used to do a lot of triathlon, so used to use it as my pre-race song.
I love it already.
Yeah, so that's a really good one if you're going into a hard meeting. That's one to listen to. But for the people who like a more gentler form of music, I would probably say Girl on Fire by Alicia Keys.
Yeah, that's come up before. That is just
Yeah,
an ace
which
song.
I also used when I was doing my triathlon training as well.
Yeah, and it's such an empowering song, and just one that
Yes.
everybody relates to, and it's one of those ones you just want to stand up and belt it out. Yeah, I
Yeah, it's a
absolutely
good
love
shower
that.
song, that's for sure.
Yeah, it is going on the list, and I love it when I hear little girls singing it and just
Yeah.
belting it out. It is a brilliant choice. I love it. And what about a favorite motivational quote?
My favorite motivational quote, which I actually have on a little plaque in my lounge, is it's not about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain.
Yeah, I love that.
Because life is never going to be perfect and you just have to work with what you've got.
Absolutely. And I think the moment that penny drops, you just kind of get on with it, don't you? And you just make the
Yes,
best of what you have. Yeah. Oh, I
that's
like that you've
right.
got that in a plaque in your lounge. That is so good. Love
And I've
it.
had it for years, actually, had it for absolutely years.
And is it one that you consciously look at every day, or is it do you have to remind yourself or something? Or do sometimes you got
Yeah, it's
things on
always
your
kind of
wall?
in my line of sight because it's
Yeah.
just to the right of the TV. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's always there. I used to
Perfect.
have it on my bedside table, actually.
Yeah. Oh, that is good. I love it.
Yeah.
And do you read? Do you have a favorite book? And this one doesn't have to be
Yes.
motivational, although I'm always amazed at my guests that have these really powerful sort of self-development books
So
going on.
I love reading. I don't have much time for reading, but I've recently discovered audiobooks where I can read books whilst doing housework, which is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, that is the
Um,
best invention ever, isn't it?
I know. And I've picked two books because I'm really massively indecisive. But the first one is an audiobook that I listen to whilst doing my housework. And it's called Contagious. And I'm trying to by Jonah Berger, actually. And it's all about how to make things go viral.
Ooh.
So I was listening to that from a business perspective. And whilst you might not necessarily get a viral post out of it, you learn a lot about visibility and about engaging your audience and how to get people interested.
Sounds right up my street. I'm going to read that next.
And the second book I picked was one I actually read hard copy a long time ago. It must have been on holiday when I did it. And I actually think this book should be taught in schools as well. And it's called The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist by Robert Tressel. And it's sort of it's a story, it's set way back in the day before unions were invented. And it's all about how badly people were treated in work, but also how badly they treated each other. And my three main takeaways from this book were acting with honesty and integrity, not being scared of competition, learning to work together and collaborate, and also creating success for all. And it's really interesting because my core values that I set for my business include all of those three. And I hadn't actually thought about that book at the time of writing them. But it's when you asked me this question, and I thought, oh, yeah, that's the book. What did I learn from it? I kind of thought, oh, hold on, I've already got these as my core values. So obviously,
Yeah.
it's stuck in my head somewhere.
Absolutely. That's incredibly interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
And yeah, I just love the takeaways from that. And I'm definitely going to add that to the list. And it's really fascinating that the things that are perceived to be a negative are in actual fact the positive. And I love
that's
the
right.
collaboration and the working together and the competition. And
Mm.
if, you and I, we know each other from another world. If we take a look around ourselves, the power of working together and what can actually be achieved. Instead
That's
of,
right.
if you fear the competition, you'll spend your life working on your own and not achieving great
Yeah.
things.
And I've actually got a meeting coming up next week with a lady who does very similar things to me. And I was just so heartwarmed by the fact that she wants to see if there's a way that we can collaborate, and not just instantly dismissing me because I'm her competition and she's
Yeah.
my competition. So I'll
Mm.
be really interested to see what falls out of that meeting.
Yeah,
I
that
think
is
great things will.
absolutely. And, putting two brilliant minds together and great things will emerge. Well, keep me
Yes,
posted. That is
I know,
just
I will do.
fantastic. Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to read those two books. Thank you for that. So, what are you currently doing at the moment then?
So I run a business called Bryony Makes Marketing Easy, and I do just that for busy small business owners with jargon-free, streamlined marketing coaching. So I'm absolutely passionate about eliminating jargon. I'm absolutely passionate about making marketing easy, and I'm absolutely passionate about creating success for all. Also, unfortunately for me, I also do freelancing in the corporate world. So I have a 25-year history of sales and marketing in pharmaceutical world. And whilst I'm building my business, I'm doing some freelance there. I say unfortunately because I just don't thrive in the corporate world anymore, which was one of my motivators for starting my own business. So the sooner I can get myself up and running, the better.
So you're hoping as one grows, the other one will get smaller and
Yeah,
smaller. And it's nice
definitely.
that if you can grow the business side of things, you can make more choices and you'll have more options for your own freedom. So
Yes.
so all that knowledge then that you've gathered in your career, you're going to be pouring into your own business. Wonderful.
Yeah, in a way, but it's interesting because if anyone's going to overcomplicate anything, the pharmaceutical industry is going to do it. So I have seen marketing at the other end of the spectrum where it's extremely complicated. There's loads of jargon, you've got loads of processes you've got to try and remember and follow. And I'm really forgetful. I've got quite a menopausal brain and I just don't remember those sort of things. So I've kind of stripped it back myself and managed mostly to get away with doing it my way, which has made me realize that you can really simplify marketing.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that led me to my business idea.
Well, I think a lot of small businesses will definitely be interested in that because when you set up a business by yourself and you're thinking, what do I need? And you start doing all your research, and marketing
Yeah.
is one of them, and it can be very overwhelming. And the fact that your business is Bryony Makes Marketing Easy, they're the words that I like to see when I'm doing my own research and I try to build it into my own processes. If it's easy, if it's simple, it
Yeah.
immediately gets my attention. And sometimes I think people go down the wrong road by overcomplicating things, trying to make themselves look clever, trying to make themselves look
That's
bigger than
right.
they are. So
Yeah.
I absolutely love your approach and I will be watching very carefully.
Thank you.
And I'm sure a lot of small businesses will as well.
Yeah, and also when you're straddling the corporate world and self-employed world, and you're essentially doing two jobs, you have to learn how to streamline things.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, you must be very busy, very
I
tired,
am
but
quite busy and quite tired. Yes,
it
that
will
would
all
sum me
pay
up.
off. It will
It
pay off
will,
in the
yeah.
end, definitely.
And for me, there's no other option. This has to be successful, so
Mm.
I'm determined to make it work.
So you're going to come on my podcast again in, so shall we say, 12 months' time
12 months time,
when the scales
absolutely.
have tipped in
Yes,
the opposite direction. Brilliant. I love
yes,
it.
yeah.
So let's talk about your leadership journey and if you can share it with me and some key milestones that shaped your career.
Yeah. So my leadership journey is actually a long one, and I want to go right to the beginning because I want people to believe that you can come from any background, any qualifications, and still be successful. So I left school at 16 with a handful of GCSEs that I didn't revise for. Some were actually surprisingly good, and some were absolutely abysmal. And I trained as a chef, because that's what my dad thought would be good for me. I
Wow.
don't know why. And but I didn't really like it because of all the unsociable hours. I was young and I wanted to be going out with my friends and things like that. Then I retrained as a fitness instructor and a dancer, which was great fun. I loved it, but I needed more money because it was in the day when fitness wasn't big and you didn't have contracts, you didn't have any security of holiday pay or anything like that. And I kind of fell into pharmaceuticals. Oh, I had a really brief stint as a ticket inspector on a train, but we'll gloss over that one.
I bet you saw some
Don't
sights
worry
on
about
that.
that one. Yeah. So then I got into pharmaceuticals and I started right at the bottom in telesales, selling to retail pharmacists. So it was all very cutthroat and based on cost.
Wow.
I worked my way up. I had a brief stint as a training coordinator, worked my way up in and became a senior brand manager. So all my training was kind of on the job, in at the deep end. I went and did formal qualifications as well whilst I was doing all that. So my key milestones, I think, of when I kind of really realised that I had got somewhere in life was one, this is probably going to sound quite boring to the listeners, but it was really pivotal to me, was that I created the very first UK National Sedation Forum. There'd never been anything like it in the UK before. And I had global speakers, the top people in sedation in ICU from all over the world.
That is not boring at all. That's incredible.
So yeah, that's when I thought, oh, I've actually it just felt so good to be really part of something, and I led it all myself. We were actually a really small company,
Yeah.
and we didn't have all the support that the big companies had, and I just got my hand stuck in, built relationships with the speakers, got the visibility out there, got the bums on the seats, and created something that was massively impactful to the UK intensive care industry. And then I think the second most pivotal moment was when my boss pointed out to me that I was second in command in the company, and it hadn't actually dawned on me.
Oh, wow. That's
And then I thought, oh, do you know
amazing.
what? That's quite cool.
So you had your head down, grafting away, and you hadn't even
Yeah.
realized, actually, I'm really important in this.
Yes, I know. I know.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah. So they're my two most pivotal moments, I think.
Wow, that what a story. That is absolutely incredible. And did you enjoy it?
Yes, I did. I absolutely loved it. I kind of made myself a bit ill with the workload. And I'll be totally open and honest, I have suffered with workplace stress before. And that's one of the reasons, I know this is going to sound a bit counterproductive, it's one of the reasons I want to run my own business. Because whilst I know it's really hard being a busy small business owner and you're wearing all the hats and you do work long hours, it's very different when it's your choice.
Mhm.
And I'll always be striving towards that point where I can reduce what I do and still be successful.
It's a different kind of pressure, I think,
Yes.
when it's your own pressure and it's a different goal. Whereas if you're in corporate and the weight just seems heavier and
Yeah.
it seems a bit hopeless, and I know that's maybe not the right word, but I completely understand what you say. And if it's when it's your own business,
Yeah.
it's a different kind of, you feel a little bit more driven because it's yours, and it's you just feel more motivated, I suppose, to work harder. But when you're in corporate, that kind of workplace stress, it's a different kind of stressor with more
Yeah.
factors.
And in your own business, you're creating the culture as well. So the
Yeah,
stresses are different, but
yeah,
you don't have the stress of kind of workplace bullying, which I've also suffered at the hands of
yeah,
very senior people. You
yeah,
don't have that sort of stress. You don't have the stress of everyone trying to make themselves look successful and
yeah,
like undercutting you to make themselves look successful. The
yeah.
only pressure you have is building a successful business, and that's actually quite a nice pressure to have.
Yeah. And every small business owner will have their own reasons for making those choices. And it's just a very, very interesting observation, isn't it? So
Mm.
while you were going through all of that, did you have any role models, or did anyone inspire you along the way? Or were you watching anyone from afar that you thought, wow, they're really doing what I'd like to do?
Yeah, and the answer to that, sadly, is not really. So no one famous has inspired me. I'm not very good with famous people. Can't keep
Well, it
up with
doesn't
them.
have
Don't
to
know
be
who they all are.
famous.
Yeah,
Not at all, it doesn't have to be
and
famous.
I wouldn't really say that anyone has influenced or inspired my style. I've always just tried to balance what's best for the company with how I would want to be treated as an employee.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really about realizing the overall strategy of the business and understanding how to get the best out of people to get you to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just knowing how people want to be treated, treating them well, like you say, getting the best out of them, what's going to motivate them to get them to do
Yeah.
what you need them to do in that moment. Yeah, no, interesting viewpoint.
Yeah. And do you know what? Funnily enough, that's really aligned to marketing as well, because when we're marketing, we're trying to get out of our customers and getting them
Yeah,
to the point to motivate them to do
yeah,
something and motivate them to get to the point where they want to be.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely
So,
brilliant. Love it.
marketing is leadership in a way.
Yeah, which brings me on
Yeah.
to my next question about communication,
Yeah.
which is probably even more aligned. So, how important do you think communication is in that kind of leadership environment then? And can you think of any examples where it went wrong or it went right for you?
Yeah. So communication is everything in leadership. And in fact, it's everything in business. Without clear, effective communication, no one knows what we want to achieve, what we need from them, and how we're going to achieve it. So there's just no direction. And this again is also really key to marketing, because unless you're being really clear with your clients about what you want them to do, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So you can't really leave anything up to the imagination. And some examples of where it's gone wrong. We were in one of the agencies. I've worked in digital agencies as well, and in one of the agencies that I worked in, we were taken over by a big American company. And the one message that we got about this takeover was nothing's going to change. And then as soon as that company came in, everything changed and we just weren't moving with it. We were like digging our heels in and saying, but you said nothing was going to change and we don't like this change.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really tough time for everyone. Everyone was miserable. Even the management were miserable because they just
Mm-hmm.
wanted us to get on and move with it and say, well, that's nice and we really like it and move on. But they just didn't give us that background to take us with them. Um, where it's gone right is actually another takeover example, but this time I was in this pharmaceutical company. We had this financial target we needed to achieve, and they took senior management, put us all in a room for a workshop day, and we did all these exercises which kind of were taking us to the point of how do we make this money we've got to make this year. We had shareholders breathing down our necks. And we all came out with our different solutions. And the one solution that I came out was we need to sell to another company. That's the easiest, quickest way we're going to make that money. Um, and everyone was like, oh, this is ridiculous. You could be doing yourself out of a job. And I was like, well, the question was, how do we make this money? Not how do I keep my job? And this is how I think we make this money. And they sold us. We got taken over. I was very fortunate and we had to reapply for our jobs, but I got to keep mine and actually got a promotion out of it. And it's the one company takeover that I've been the most on board with, not only because it was my idea, but because they took us through the process to understand why we were doing what we were doing. And that's communication.
How interesting. And
Mm.
it just sounds, when you put it like that, it sounds like a no-brainer. But
Yeah,
when you explain to people the who, the why, the what, the where, the when, they just automatically, I understand. It's for this reason. And going back to your first example, nothing's going to change. You've immediately lied to your audience.
yeah,
And what the question in my head at that point was, well, were they upset that they were lied to? Or were they upset that things were changing? And it was a combination of both, because digging your
definitely.
heels in, it's like it's set in stone, nothing's going to change. And you're always going to be going back to, but you said it wouldn't. And you
Yeah,
can't just change your mind in that moment. But it's very, very simple. Things are going to change. Really sorry. It will be difficult, but we will hold your hand every step of the way. This is
yeah,
going to happen. This is going to happen. And this is going to happen. And people will come with you on that journey
that's
when
right.
it's transparent, when you've communicated. And, I've also witnessed when you've got to communicate not that great news, but you've communicated it, people will still get on board with it and will still muck in and will still move with you to make it happen and make it as best an experience as possible because you've communicated that message.
Yeah,
And it just boils down to the very basics of what we said before: treating people well, treating them with
That's right.
respect.
Yeah, and the communication allows people to move to that point of acceptance, because we loved our company and we loved it the way it was. We thought it was brilliant. Everyone enjoyed working there. So for someone to come to you and say things are going to change, that's hard to hear. But if you're told in advance and you reach that point of acceptance of, okay, this is the way it is, I still need my job, I still need the money, so I'm going to have to embrace this change. And then they take you through the change step by step. You can be a lot more accepting rather than just like, well, no, no one mentioned change to me. I'm not ready for this.
Yeah. And change is probably the most terrifying word to an employee.
Yes.
And it is just, it's notorious, isn't it? It does take years to work through the company, but that word is terrifying. But there are
Mm,
ways to sort of blend it through and do it well. But no, it's really, really
right.
interesting insight into that. So your audience then, with your business, how comfortable are you with your own audience, and are you happy speaking in public and being visible on social media?
So in terms of speaking in public, I've done a lot of speaking at conferences within the companies that I've worked. So that's not a massive challenge for me. I'm not going to say I'm like 100% confident. Everyone gets nervous. No one wants to make a fool of themselves. Everyone wants to do a good job. But in terms of speaking in public, I'm not that worried. Visibility online was a massive problem for me. And the reason for that was last year, I had a stalker. So I was being stalked and harassed. So I basically came off all social media and moved house overnight.
Wow.
Had to find a new home. Even my family didn't really know where I lived. They knew what town I was in. They didn't know my address. So I've kind of gone from that complete anonymity to having to be really, really visible online. And I really didn't want to do it. So when I first set up my business, it wasn't called Bryony Makes Marketing Easy. It was called Smasheroo. Don't ask. It was called Smasheroo. And there was no face to the business. But I
Yeah.
quickly learned that that wasn't going to work. I had to be the brand and I was going to have to be visible myself.
Hmm.
And, I had to do a bit of soul searching. But conclusion I came to was I can't let one person define how I make my living in life. So therefore, I just had to overcome it, and whatever happens or whatever falls out of that, I'll deal with it as and when it happens.
Wow, that's so interesting, because the thing that I spend most of my time working on is visibility.
Mm,
And it's interesting because people have various reasons for choosing how they're visible. On podcasts, obviously, you don't have to do your face, you can go on social media, or there's faceless social media. And there's various different reasons why people choose their own level of visibility. And I've not come across that before now, and I'm really sorry that you've had to go through that experience. It
yeah.
sounds absolutely horrendous. And to think that that's had to influence your decisions that you've had to make. And it's just occurred to me that you're probably not the only one,
No.
that.
Yeah.
And there was a program on recently on UK TV about that, and about the influence that that had on these girls' lives and the changes that they had to make. And it must be absolutely awful, but
Yeah.
you've got to carry on. You've got to earn a living, you've got to eat. And
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
decisions that you've had to make are, incredibly brave ones. And I
Yeah.
haven't even had to consider it myself before. So I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes and think, well, what does that even look like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've come across a lot of small or people who are trying to start a small business, and their biggest issue has been they've come from an abusive relationship and therefore they feel they just can't be visible online.
Hmm.
And I think that's a really difficult thing. But I think that at some point they just have to try and overcome that issue as safely as possible.
Yeah. Another one of my guests, we were talking about being visible, and they were really confident having been on stage and working for corporate. But when it came to their own business, the confidence was different, because it was all
Yes.
them, and they weren't
Yes.
hiding behind this corporate veil. And it's just something that I'm spending time exploring at the moment. What does visibility mean to different people, and
Mm,
that's what I'm actually looking at now, compartmentalizing where people are comfortable, so I can build something that is comfortable for everybody, and that's kind of my brand.
That
Visibility that's
sounds amazing.
comfortable for you.
Yes,
Exactly.
and I think that would be a really desired service. I
Yeah.
think there'll be a lot of people that need that. But I think also with visibility, it often feels quite arrogant because you are positioning yourself as the expert, and we're not really conditioned in the UK to say, "Oh, hello, I'm the expert at this." And it's really about having the confidence that just because you're positioning yourself as the expert, it doesn't mean you're the only expert. There are
Mm-hmm.
lots of other experts, but
Mm-hmm.
you're an expert that people might want to work with,
Mm-hmm.
and trying just to make it not feel quite so arrogant.
And yeah, that was also an interesting question. And even the subtlety in your words there. I'm the expert, or I'm an expert. And
Yes.
yeah, it's just, and I'm not particularly comfortable with using that word. I'm the,
Mm.
an expert. And you think of the years of experience that you and I have in our different fields, and sometimes I'll put I'm an expert. No, I'm a coach. No, I'm an expert. I'm a coach, and I have to kind of go back and what's the definition of an expert? And I mean, there's a million definitions. 10,000 hours doing this, 10,000, and sometimes you've just got to be a person with a lot of knowledge in a particular area, and
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more advanced in the journey than someone else who's behind
Yeah.
you. And for me, I just think if someone is looking at visibility or communications or whatever, and I think to myself, can I help this person? Yes, I absolutely can. And that's when I know in my bones that I am the right coach for that particular person. But I think you're right. It's part of our culture that we don't bang the drum and say, well, actually, I'm really good at doing this particular thing, and I'm the right person for you.
Yeah. And also, people aren't going to work with you because you're the person who knows the most in the world ever about your chosen subject. They're going to work with you because you have the knowledge that they don't have,
Mm.
but they also know you, like you, and trust you. So it's about allowing people to have a choice. I mean, you go into Tesco's and there'll be 10 different types of ketchup probably, but it's kind of like that. There'll be 10 different marketing coaches, but some people will prefer me over others and some won't, and it's just attracting the right people.
It is, and it is definitely a personality as well. I do that. I buy into personality, and I think, oh well, I really like this person. I really like this person. And again, that should be a thing that we can put our confidence in. It's not all about just being an expert. It's about being a person that people like to work with and having a
Yes, yeah,
personality. And the thing that I notice a lot of people don't do, being so enthusiastic about what it is that you do, and about
yeah,
being so passionate about what it is that you do, because I know that that's really infectious, and I too can get carried away when someone's
yeah.
really passionate about what they do. And that again is part of the selling process and the band, the know, like, trust, and buying into it. But it's just an interesting realm of what we do, isn't it?
It is, and this is actually probably quite a nice segue for me to give your listeners a top marketing tip, because this kind of ties in with what we've been saying. So there are three types of messaging that will make people buy. So you've got your primary messaging, which is what you do. So I am an expert in. You've then got your secondary messaging, which is about your values. And these are the things that will most likely get people to buy with you, because if your values are the same as theirs, it will help them to align with you. So this could be something that you're really passionate about, or a charity that you support, or you're really anti-bullying, or you're really anti-domestic abuse. And that will then attract the right people who really align with you. And then your third type of messaging is kind of, I haven't really got a name for it, but I call it the quirk. So it's little things that people get to know about you. So it will come out. It's quite important to get these things out, especially in your social media, so people can get to know, like, and trust you. But for me, for an example, for me, people know I love a spreadsheet, whether it's in my business life or my personal life. I'm highly organized, and I need to be in bed by 9 o'clock. And it's kind of those little quirks. So if you think
Aha.
about what are your in jokes with your friends, if you
Yeah.
ask your friend what's one thing about springs to mind when you mention the name Bryony, and see what they say. Those are the kind of little in jokes that you can
Oh,
bring
that's
into your
so good.
marketing to
Well,
again, people get to know, like, trust you.
I've been peppering my social media with quirks without realizing I was doing it. So my I'm not I don't go to bed early. I like to, when everyone else is going to bed, I like to be sat up watching Scandinavian dramas, world dramas, subtitles, brilliant, love it. And I'm also, and I will say this with passion, I am an expert at making espresso martinis.
It's a good talent to have.
Yeah, my sister taught me how to do them, and she said, "Oh, they're really hard to make, but I love them." So I practiced, and I am an expert at making espresso martinis. So if you look on my Instagram, there's probably too many pictures of those.
Yeah.
But no, you're right.
It's really important to get those three types of messaging in, because you can't constantly just tell people what you do.
Yeah.
You have to get those other things in there as well.
Yeah. No, that's the really, really fantastic tips. Amazing. Thank you. When I hear spreadsheets, I will think of you.
Yeah.
So what legacy would you like to leave as a leader, and how would you measure your impact? Or maybe you don't, but is it something you've given some thought to?
I just really hope to inspire people to believe they can be successful regardless of what background or what qualifications they have. Because I just passionately believe that everyone can be, everybody has a talent and everybody has the ability to create their own business.
I love that you said about your GCSEs, because it's just a little thing of mine as well. When kids are 16 and they're doing the GCSEs, it's like your world has ended when you haven't got what you think. Everyone else has got what you think. And I love it when people are on TV or I'm listening to podcasts and they say, I only got one GCSE, or I didn't get any GCSEs, and now I'm doing this. And I always point it out, because I just think, it's not the only path. It's not the only way to be successful. And I love that you did that at the start of the podcast. So thank you. And you did really well, by the way, but it was just, it absolutely got my attention immediately.
And in the industry I'm in, it's pretty unheard of to be in that industry without some kind of science degree. And I've got, a handful of GCSEs, and people have sometimes questioned that. They'll automatically ask you, what university did you go to? I'm like, well, I didn't go. And then they're kind of like, well, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, have I been successful? And they're like, well, yes, you have. And that's the end of that conversation then.
And it's not the only route.
It's not, no.
And we need people that have alternative routes. And we need to show young people that there are alternative routes, because my particular passion is that everyone is not academic, but we can't write them off because they're not academic. But they're also brilliant in other areas, which means that they've got other skills which are useful in industry and in business, but we don't channel those skills in the same way that we do with academics. So that is something that really, I'm passionate about, and I just love it when, we get examples of that. But there are a million different routes, and it just bothers me that young people are conditioned into thinking the only way to succeed is through exams.
And it's generally the non-academic people that can sell and hustle and make money out of nothing.
Because they're creative, and they've got creative minds and different ways of doing things. And that you'll know that from your experience. In order to sell well, you need to think outside the box. You need to be a little bit more creative, because you can't just read from a script and this is my product and this is how I sell it. But you're right, absolutely right. They're the ones that are the best at this.
They're hungry for it as well. And you need to be hungry for it.
Yeah. So what about you? Where can we find you online?
So you can find me on Facebook in the Easy Peasy Marketing Group, which is for busy small business owners. I am on Instagram as Bryony Makes Marketing Easy as well. And because I'm all about streamlining, that's the only two platforms you're going to find me on. I am on LinkedIn, but that's more for my pharmaceutical work, and I don't do a lot on there.
Well, I will put all those links on the show notes for the podcast. So thank you so much, Bryony. It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, I could talk all night to you about all the things we've chatted about, but it has been an absolute delight talking to you. And thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for spending time with us today, and special thanks to my lovely guest, Bryony Jackson. Do you need to increase your visibility And would you like to make more sales? Would you like to get better at speaking and giving presentations? If the answer is yes, then don't miss out on my free resources. You can find the links in the podcast notes, as well as the links that Bryony mentioned in the podcast. Join me on the next episode for more tips, tricks and insights. You can follow me on Instagram at Coach Amanda Jane or visit my website amandajane.co.uk. Bye for now.